The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Sages of India, Part 8. Thus, in spite of preaching mercy to animals, in spite of the sublime ethical religion, in spite of the hair splitting discussions about the existence or non existence of a permanent soul, the whole building of Buddhism tumbled down piecemeal, and the ruin was simply hideous. I have neither the time nor the inclination to describe to you the hideousness that came in the wake of Buddhism. The most hideous ceremonies, the most horrible, the most obscene books that human hands have ever written, or the human brain ever conceived, the most bestial forms that have ever passed under the name of religion, have all been the creation of degraded Buddhism. But India has to live, and the Spirit of the Lord descended again. He who declared, I will come whenever virtue subsides, came again, and this time the manifestation was in the south. And up rose that young Brahmin, of whom it has been declared that at the age of 16 he had completed all his writings. The marvelous boy Shankaracharya arose. The writings of this boy of 16 are the wonders of the modern world, and so was the boy. He wanted to bring back the Indian world to its pristine purity, and think of the amount of task before him. I have told you a few points about the state of things that existed in India. All these horrors that you are trying to reform are the outcome of the reign of degradation. The Tatars and the Baluchis and all the hideous races of mankind came to India and became Buddhists and assimilated with us and brought their national customs, and the whole of our national life became a huge page of the most horrible and the most bestial customs. That was the inheritance which that boy got from the Buddhists. And from that time to this, the whole work in India is a reconquest of this Buddhistic degradation by the Vedanta. It is still going on. It is not yet finished. Shankara came, a great philosopher, and showed that the real essence of Buddhism and that of Vedanta are not very different, but that the disciples did not understand the master and have degraded themselves, denied the existence of the soul and of God, and have become atheists. That was what Shankara showed, and all the Buddhists began to come back to the old religion. But they then had become accustomed to all these forms. What could be done? Then came the brilliant Ramanuja. Shankara was his great intellect. I am afraid had not as a great as a heart. Ramanuja's heart was greater. He felt for the downtrodden. He sympathized with them. He took up the ceremonies, the accretions that had gathered, made them pure so far as they could be, and instituted new ceremonies, new methods of worship for the people who absolutely required them. At the same time, he opened the door to the highest spiritual worship from the Brahmin to the Pariah. That was Ramanuja's work. That work rolled on, invaded the north, was taken up by some great leaders there. But that was much later, during the Mohammedan rule, and the brightest of these prophets of comparatively modern times in the north was Chaitanya. You may mark one characteristic since the time of Ramanuja, the opening of the door of spirituality to everyone. That has been the watchword of all prophets succeeding Ramanuja, as it had been the watchword of all prophets before Shankara. I do not know why Shankara should be represented as rather exclusive. I do not find anything in his writings which are exclusive. As in the case of the declarations of Lord Buddha, this exclusiveness has been attributed to Shankara's teachings in most probably not due to his teachings, but due to the incapacity of his disciples. This one great northern sage, Chaitanya, represented the mad love of the gopis. Himself a Brahmin, born of one of the most rationalistic families of the day, himself a professor of logic, fighting and gaining a world victory, for this he had learned from his childhood as the highest ideal of life, and yet through the mercy of the sage, the whole life of that man became changed. He gave up his fight, his quarrels, his professorship of logic, and became one of the greatest teachers of bhakti the world has ever known. Mad Chaitanya. His bhakti rolled over the whole land of Bengal, bringing solace to everyone. His love knew no bounds. The saint or the sinner, the Hindu or the Mohammedan, the pure or the impure, the prostitute, the street walker, all had a share in his love, all had a share in his mercy. And even to the present day, although greatly degenerated, as everything does become in time, his sect is the refuge of the poor, of the downtrodden, of the outcast, of the weak, of those who have been rejected by all society. But at the same time, I must remark for truth's sake that we find this. In the philosophic sects, we find wonderful liberalisms. There is not a man who follows Shankara who will say that all the different sects of India are really different. At the same time, he was a tremendous upholder of exclusiveness as regards caste. But with every Vaishnavite preacher, we find a wonderful liberalism as to the teaching of caste questions. But exclusiveness as regards religious questions.